This is chapter number 4, the making of global world. We are taking question and answer on the making of global world. First question is, give 2 examples of different types of global exchanges which took place before the 17th century, choosing an example from Asia and one from America. So the example for America had abundant crop, that is lot of crops, minerals and precious metals like the gold and the silver. The Europeans enhanced their wealth by utilizing the rich resources of gold and silver from America. Example from Asia, China exported pottery and silk to India and Southeast Asia in return of textile goods and spices. Explain how the global transfer of disease in pre-modern world helped in the colonialization of the Americas. The global transfer of the disease, namely smallpox, in the pre-modern world helped the colonization or help in the colonization of the American people, because the original inhabitant, which are known as the American Indian, had no immunity against these diseases that came from Europe, because for a long time these Americans were cut off from the outside world. And before the discovery of America, it has been cut off from the regular contact with the rest of the world for millions of years. So in particular, if you talk about the disease, it's smallpox. It proved deadly killer. Once it was introduced, it spread deep into the continent, ahead even of any European reaching there. That is the place where even the Europeans were not there. This smallpox, it just spread like fire. So it killed and decimated whole communities, paving the way for conquest for the Europeans. Write note to explain the effects of following: the British government's decision to abolish the Corn Laws. So after the answer is here. If you see the textbook, your NCERT textbooks, you'll find the answer here. After the British government's decision to abolish the Corn Laws, food could be imported into Britain more cheaply than it could be produced within the country. This Corn Law is basically restriction of corn import in the UK, that is Britain. So British agriculture was unable to compete with these imports. They were cheaper in price. Vast areas of land were now left uncultivated, and thousands of men and women were thrown out of the work. That is, they became unemployed. They flocked to the cities and migrated overseas to different parts of the world. This indirectly led to global agriculture and rapid urbanization, that is a prerequisite of industrial growth. Now the coming of rinderpest to Africa. Rinderpest had a terrifying impact. It's a disease for animals. So it has terrifying impacts on people's livelihood and the local economy. So this rinderpest killed 90% of the cattle, which destroyed African livelihoods, because Africans were entirely dependent on their cattle and livestock. So planters, mine owners and colonial governments strengthened their power and forced African into the labor market, because 90% are dead, 10% they just grabbed. Europeans just grabbed them, and now Africans were left with no livestock, so they had to work. Next is the death of men of working age in Europe because of the World War. The death of the men who were young, who can fight, that is why they were taken to the war. The death of men of working age in Europe because of the World War reduced the able-bodied workforce in Europe, that is the fit people in Europe. Because men went to the battle, now women had to step out of their home to undertake jobs that earlier only men were expected to do. The Great Depression in the Indian economy. The Great Depression, you can also call it as the economic slowdown. So the depression immediately affected the Indian trade. Indian exports and imports nearly halved between 1928 to 1934. Between this period, that is 1934 and 1928, wheat prices just halved. It became 50%. Across India, peasants' indebtedness increased. That is, they have taken loan, so the indebtedness increased. They used up their savings, mortgaged lands, and sold whatever they have, like jewelry, precious metal. They had to meet their expenses. So in these Great Depression, economic depression years, India became an exporter of precious metals, notably gold. Now, this Great Depression we have already seen. Let us see the decision of MNCs, multinational companies, Bahurashtriya Companiya, to relocate production to Asian countries. So the relocation of industry to low-wage countries, that is the countries where there are a lot of population, and lot of population along with those population which are unemployed. They need some employment. So they are ready to work for low wage. So the relocation of industry to low wage countries stimulated world trade and capital flows. In the last 2 decades, the world's economic geography has been transformed as countries like India, like China and Brazil, they have undergone rapid economic transformation. Give 2 examples from history to show the impact of technology on food availability. First is the transportation, faster railways, lighter wagons, larger ships. All these help move food more cheaply and quickly from faraway farms to the final markets. Then the refrigerated ships, ship with refrigeration, which enable the transport of perishable foods, namely meat, butter, eggs over long distances. What is meant by the Bretton Woods Agreement? So the Bretton Woods Agreement was signed between the world powers in July 1944, and Bretton Woods, this is a place in New Hampshire, USA. So this meeting established IMF, that is International Monetary Fund, to deal with external surpluses and deficit of its member nations, and also an international bank, Vishwa Bank, for reconstruction and development was set up to finance the reconstruction which is required post-war. Imagine that you are an indentured Indian labor, that is, you are a girmitiya we call in Hindi, the indentured labor in the Caribbean. Drawing from the details in this chapter, write a letter to your family describing your life and feelings. So what we can write is respected father, mother, name you can give, respected family in all. I hope all of you are fine there. I have been hired by the colonizers or you can say the agent under a contract. This contract is indentured labor contract, stating that I could return to India after working for 5 years at a plantation. But, however, the contract was a fraud and they're not allowing me to return. I joined this job in the hope to escape poverty and oppression, but here the living conditions and the working conditions are quite harsh. Most of the workers here belong to Bihar, central India and dry regions of Tamil Nadu. There are few legal rights given to us. However, we have developed a new art forms for expression, and now we somehow intermingle, and now we are living together almost. You're loving your name. Explain the three types of movements or flows within the international economic exchange. Find one example of each type of flow which involved India and Indians and write a short account of it. So what were the flow? See, the three types of the movement of, or you can say the flow, pravaha, within the international economic exchange. First is trade. Then we have labor, flow of labor. And then third, we have flow of capital. So these are the three types of movements or flows. Flow of trade, that is trade or in goods like say cloth or wheat. Flow of labor means the migration of people to new areas in search of work. And flow of capital means short-term and long-term loan to and from other nations. Let us take an example. India was involved in trade relations since ancient times. It exported textiles and spices in return of gold and silver from Europe. In the 19th century, hundreds of thousands of Indian laborers were sent to work on plantations, in mines, in road, railway construction projects around the world. During British rules in India, many Europeans established their factories in India. And many Indian traders ventured beyond European colonies. They established flourishing emporia or emporiums at busy ports worldwide, selling local and imported these stuff to tourists. Explain the cause of the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a result of many factors. Prosperity in USA during 1920s created a cycle of higher employment and incomes. So this led to rise in consumption and demands. More investment and more employment created tendency of speculation, which led to the Great Depression of 1929 up to the mid 1930s. Stock market got crashed in 1929. It created panic among investors and depositors who stopped investing and depositing. That is why it created a cycle of depreciation. Also, the failure of banks. Some of the banks closed down, where people withdrew all their assets, leaving them unable to invest. Some banks called back loans taken from them at the same dollar rate despite the falling value of dollar. So it was worsened by British change in policy to value pound at the pre-war value. Explain what is referred to as G77 countries. In what ways can G77 be seen as a reaction to the activities of the Bretton Woods twins? G77 countries, this is a group of developing countries, Vikasshil Desh, that demanded a new international economic order, NIEO. By the NIEO, they meant a system that would give them real control over their natural resources, more development assistance, fairer prices for the raw materials, and better access for their manufactured goods or produced in developed countries' market. Now, this IMF, International Monetary Fund, and World Bank, these are Bretton twins. They have been established by the developed countries. The decision-making power in these institutions are in the hands of these developed countries, Western industrial powers, and the United States of America. So these institutions were set up to meet the financial needs and the industrialized countries and had nothing to do with the poverty and lack of development in the former colonial countries and developing nations. So those who got freedom from colonies, IMF and World Bank has nothing to do with them, or they are not created like this to help them. So G77 was created to cater to the needs of exactly this of nature of developing nations. Therefore, G77 be seen as a reaction to the activities of Bretton Woods twins. First is people, livelihood, and local economy of which of the following was badly, means countries we have to find out, was badly affected by the disease named Rinderpest. The answer is Africa. Because this Rinderpest, it killed almost 90% of the, you can say, animals who belonged to Africa and who belonged to the African people, which were the most important, you can say, livelihood, or because they don't work. African people, they were not working at that time. They don't know payment, etc. Salary, they doesn't know. They are only dependent on their stock, livestock, and these livestock were badly hurt by rinderpest. Which of the following powerful weapons were used by the Spanish conquerors to colonize America during mid-17th century? The answer is biological weapons. It's the pox, that is, we call it as chechak. So this was the smallpox, which was a biological weapon they used. Why did the wheat price fall down by 50% between 1928 and 1934? The answer here is due to Great Depression, or you can say economic slowdown. Most Indian indentured workers came from, the answer is A, Eastern Uttar Pradesh. Who adopted the concept of assembly line to produce automobiles? He was Henry Ford. He actually got this idea from the chicken, where they are killed, the chicken, and there was an assembly line, and he got that idea from there. In ancient period, the kaudi we call as, were used as what? It's a currency. Kaudi. This kaudi belonged to Maldives. So these were just shells, shells that are found in the shores of Maldives, and that are used as kaudis. Which of the following disease killed the majority of America original inhabitants? And the answer is smallpox, as we just saw in previous question. It's smallpox, because these people were not immune to this disease. That is why they just died. In which place of India were the canal colonies or canal colonies? Canal is the Nehar, waterways, small waterways, colonies set up. The answer here is Punjab. The place, this Punjab, this area we were talking about, is half desert area. So because of this canal, the wheat was grown, and it was grown in order to export it. The fast spreading disease of cattle plague is known as, ninth, the answer is rinderpest. Which of the following place was an important destination for indentured migrants? And the answer here is Caribbean island, the Trinidad, Guyana, like this. At which of the following states in USA was the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference held in 1944? The answer is New Hampshire. There was a hotel there, and Bretton Woods, that is called the place. There was a hotel where this was organized. Which two institutions were well known as Bretton Woods Institution? The answer here is IMF and World Bank. 12. C is the answer. Who introduced the assembly line method for producing automobiles on a large scale? The answer here is, again, Henry Ford. He created such business or such use of the assembly line that in 3 minutes he was able to produce one vehicle, one car. Newly irrigated areas to settle peasants of Punjab were known as canal colonies. The group of powers collectively known as the Axis power during the Second World War were, see, there were two parties which were in fight, in pursuit. Axis power and the Allies. So 15, the answer is Germany, Italy, and Japan. This is Second World War we are talking about. Who among the following is a Nobel Prize winner? V.S. Naipaul. He belonged to the Caribbean islands. And as the name suggests, his forefathers might have been the indentured laborers from India. Which of the following combination correctly indicates the three flows of international economic exchange? The answer here is goods, labor, and capital. Next one is, which of the following statement correctly identifies the corn laws? It was restricted, that is, the corn was restricted to be imported to England. So answer is A. Which of the following refers to El Dorado? The answer is the fable city of gold. El Dorado, the fable city of gold. Next is, until 18th century, which two countries were considered the richest in the world? And it was, of course, India and China. Which of the following reflects the culture fusion between India and Trinidad? The answer here is chutney music. You can see the beats of the you can say Uttar Pradesh and nearby area. The music, you can hear the flavor of this music in this chutney music. Transport of perishable goods over long distance was possible because of refrigerated ships. The ships having a possibility of refrigeration so that the perishable goods like the meat can be sent over long distance. Which of the following sustained the African lives for centuries? The answer here is land and the livestock. Livestock, the animals they reared, they get the milk, cheese, curd from them, and of course meat. In Trinidad, what was referred as Jose? Jose. The answer is annual Muharram. This is a Muslim, you can say mostly Shia, the Shia festivity is this one, but it's not a festivity because they mourn for someone. They mourn from Hazrat Ali. So annual Muharram procession marking a carnival. Jose. What is meant by tariff? The answer here is tax imposed on countries' import from the rest of the world. That is tariff, levied. The World Bank was set up to, the answer here is finance post-war construction. Post-war construction. Because there was war, and after war, all the countries were not in a position to stand up themselves. They need some reconstruction agency. Next, mark the correct response out of the following. The answer here is the Silk Route acted as a link between different countries. Correct. The Silk Route helped in cultural and commercial exchange. Correct. The Silk Route acted as a route for westbound silk cargoes from China. Correct. So our answer will be all of the above. Why was the 19th century indenture described as a system of slavery? You have to mark the most suitable statement. The answer here is the indentured labor did not have any rights and lived like slaves. Because the contract between them, everything is not disclosed. They are just shown the positive side. And once they reach there, they are confronted with all the bad things that have not been intimated to them. Why did the export of fine Indian textile to England decline in 19th century? The answer here is its British government imposed heavy tariff on import of cotton textile. Next, which of the following resulted in Britain trade surplus? The answer here is British export to India was much higher than British imports from India. That is why it resulted in Britain's trade surplus. Which of the following factor compelled the Africans to work for wages? and this was of course the disease which killed a lot of, or almost 90% of the livestock on which these Africans were dependent. So this is loss of livestock. Which of the following is the most important cause of Great Depression? As I said, economic slowdown. The answer is agriculture overproduction leading to fall of prices in agricultural goods. Why were the Europeans attracted most to Africa? Anything which gave them the material, the resources, the land, they're happy. So answer here is for the vast land resources and mineral wealth. Which of the following enabled the Europeans to conquer and control the Africans? The answer is control over the scarce resource of cattle. That is, because of the rinderpest, around 90% of the cattle or livestock already died. 10% were remaining, so they just got control over this 10%. That is how they conquered. Which of the following is the direct effect of Great Depression on Indian trade? The answer is Indian exports and imports nearly halved between 1928 to 1934. If I can give you some number, it was around 107 to 52, or you can say 100 to 52, it went down. 50, it went down, almost halved. So this is the key to all the questions we just covered.